Hopefully take 3 is the charm here. Kids, you could have knocked me over with a feather when I discovered just how many Russ Meyer films I was able to watch this week over on Amazon Prime. It helped push me deep down a rabbit hole I haven't been down in a long time. Without further ado, welcome back to Piercing Pop Culture, and tonight we are venturing after The Late Show, my series where I talk about whatever's on my brain, the good, the bad, whatever's preying on my film history and pop culture history nerd brain. And tonight we're discussing Russ Meyer, because that's where I've been, believe it or not, kids. I've been embracing my Russ Meyer completionist hope. So I am not a neophyte to Russ Meyer. Believe it or not, I was first introduced to his work in film school. I can't remember which class, but I had a professor with the delightful insights to show us Beyond the Valley of the Dolls in one of the classes. A film that, for those who might not know this little bit of trivia, was written by film critic Roger Ebert. And Beyond the Valley of the Dolls has stayed with me in a way very few films have. And as a 1970s variety and game show fan, I adore Dolly Read with every fiber of my being. Her and her smile and giggle just make me happy every time I see her. So Russ Meyer, on Letterboxd at least, is billed as a director, producer, screenwriter, cinematographer, editor, actor, and photographer. He's in that level of low-budget exploitation cult filmmaking. Many are probably familiar, at least with his name, but if you aren't, he is an exploitation filmmaker best known for the prominent bust size of his actresses. To quote Match Game, the bazooms. It's all about the bazooms. So as mentioned, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls is my introduction, and I've seen Faster Pussycat Kill Kill a couple of times now, and most notably on the big screen. I had an interesting experience at an Alamo Draft House where the projectionist must not have known how to run the projector, or was just generally confused because the entire second half of the print was framed with the actress's breasts shot was the primary focus. Or they just had a sense of humor, but it didn't necessarily feel intentional because, it wasn't shot like that. But anywho, this week I have been digging deep to try and fill some more of the blind spots. In the past, I've seen things like Vixen and digging in the deepest corners of the internet, which I couldn't even tell you at this point where I found them. Some of his early works, things like Lorna, Eve and the Handyman, and Wild Girls of the Naked West, because yes, that is a title. But this week, I was able to track down Supervixens, Beneath the Valley of the Ultra-Vixens, Up, and Motopsycho. And this is between Amazon Prime and Midnight Pulp. And for those of you who have not been over to Midnight Pulp, who perhaps enjoy the weird, the wacky, and the cult exploitation, that is definitely a place I would recommend you pay a visit, because it has got one of the most diverse, most original, and most interesting lineups of programming I have seen in a long time. For those of you with a penchant for the weird and the exploitation, it's definitely a place to go because very few other sites come close. Next to Amazon, though, because I was able to get, I think, all but Up on those over on Amazon. As I dove into those this week, I was intrigued with the different formulas and how these came across. Motopsycho, of course, felt like Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. It shot right around the same time, and I was given immense glee when I just saw Alex Rocco in that film. It's listed on IMDb, at least, I think, as his first film. And he's one who I'm still very new with still, but I've seen him at least a couple of times on Tattletales, and seeing him play a doctor trying to wreak havoc on a gang of bikers who assaulted his wife colored it in fascinating scope with the game show appearances I've seen more than 10 years later after this film was shot. But I am still playing Beneath the Valley of the Supervixens over in my brain. So let's get the letterbox synopsis out of the way to give you a little taste of what that was. Believe it or not, even small-town USA, those unfulfilled and unrelieved in the midst of plenty reside. Lavona and LeVar could have the perfect relationship, were it not for Lamar's obsession with rear entry. The film includes Kit and Navidad, Anne Marie, Ken Carr, June Mack, Patrick Wright. Kit and Navidad and Anne Marie both pop up in other Russ Meyer films, but those are kind of the names that I was most familiar with. But as a stylistic feast, this was one that I think is going to sit up next to something like Beyond the Valley of the Dolls for me. This was cartoonish and over the top and wacky in a way that I just absolutely adored. Something like Supervixen is still a bit more grounded, a bit more set in a real world. This had absolutely no qualms with going full-on cartoonist. Like with Anne Marie playing a religious disc jockey and fully willing to use every inch of her anatomy. That's what makes sense for those who have seen the film, and you can probably assume, since I'm talking about a Russ Meyer film, Kit and Navidad having what at least appears to be a tremendous amount of fun in this role. I can't necessarily tell you what they're doing with the script. This is leaning into ideas of small-town USA and small-town Americana. And what it really reminded me of were like mid-1960s, mid-1970s instructional films. I was a kid in the 90s, so we were still seeing a bit of those when I was going to school. It would be the thing that they brought in, the projector, the dusty old projector. So you've got the voice of God narrator, and there was a very specific line delivery, and I think they were trying to talk about it's that old chestnut, sex in suburbia, sex in the small town, and really playing with that idea that everybody's got their quirks and things like that. And this was such a brash, in your face, colorful, over the top film that I was just captivated with what was coming together with this from start to finish. It is such a step forward from something like even The Handyman, where you've got one location, a couple of actors, and not even an audio track, to those middle run films where it's a few actors, black and white, in the middle of the desert, very small, very telegraphed for cult. This is the opposite, world from that. This is fascination with tone. This is playing with tone, playing with ideas of style, trying to tap in and conjure certain associations with the audience, all while using that very distinctive, very, at this point, iconic, and I would say recognizable Russ Meyer lens. Supervixens, meanwhile, hearkened to, I would say for me, a closer place to something like Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. A little more grounded than something like Beneath the Valley of the Ultra-Vixens. A little more believable, a little more seemingly set in this world. It's essentially, for lack of a better descriptor, a road film through a Russ Meyer lens. And then you have Charles Napier in it as well as the primary antagonist, which really also grounds it with Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, because he pops up in that as well. I did really eat this film up, though, in the road structure. They were able to play with some associations, play with some stereotypes, a little more fun with the storytelling, and you could tell they were winking at a kind of road archetype. So they were still having some fun. It wasn't a hard, serious, gritty, grimy film. It's still gritty in the sense that it's a 1970s Russ Meyer film, but there's still some of that later polish that you have in, the Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, things like that. This is still a big, brash color film, but it's definitely more grounded than something like Up and Ultra-Vixens. Watching these Russ Meyer films really fascinates me, stepping into this exploitation film world and seeing this troupe of actors. And it gets me thinking about and really wanting to learn more about the people behind these portrayals. Somebody like Anne Marie acting for the cheap seats in Ultra Vixen, Sherry Eubank, Ushi Dygard, and Supervixens. These names, these personas. This is such a world, such a varied, colored, complicated world. I'm going to go ahead and bring this to a close now. Thank you so much for joining me here at Piercing Pop Culture. This was a treat, this one, and I hope to keep having some of these discussions like this, so listen out for more after the late show. They won't always be things like Russ Meyer. I've been talking about things like your gateway film and finding joy in film, and what I'm really trying to bring to life and harness here in this series. My regular drops are Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, so definitely keep an ear out wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me, and have a good one all.